You're listening to One Family, What's God Doing? Where we explore what God's doing in YWAM locations throughout Virginia. We can't wait for you to find out what God's doing today. Welcome back to What's God Doing? And I've got Dustin Campbell back in front of the mic. And Dustin, what's God doing in Lynchburg?
Oh my gosh. God is, graduation.
That's true.
Oh, no, God is moving. I definitely want to get into the fact is that we're sending on Monday, we're sending a team to South Africa, which is amazing. And that is a whole God story right there. But this week, like literally this week is graduation week. So we have students who are undergrads are moving out of their dorms, and then come Friday, Saturday is graduation. And so the whole city is just kind of like in that graduation mode. Unless you live in a college town, you don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, just like, I remember living in Richmond. Of course, we have VCU, but I would say the population in comparison to the college, here it's like 1/5 of the city is like either employed or studying at Liberty. And so, and then you have all the economics. So probably half the economics is surrounded that university. So of course this is a crazy season, but so what's God doing as far as just that is it's a time of transition, and in that transition time, it's interesting because I believe that's what God called us here to be is for that season of those people's lives that are in the time of transition. And part of that also is like to help, and our one of our calling is to help mobilize people for missions. And come Friday, we have we had a team of 10 and they got down to 8. It's all good relationships, just the way it worked out. It wasn't an issue of finances; it was more of an issue of what God was speaking to people. But we have eight young people, one including my daughter, leaving on Monday to go to South Africa, and they'll be gone for 2 weeks. And Gil, the leader, will be staying a little bit longer. But that is a God story. I think when you think about when we first came here in the first semester when we first landed, I through different connections I met this guy named Gil, and Gil is he's a leader in his own right. I have such admiration for this young man, and Gil, God spoke to him prior to even knowing that YWAM was here, that he felt this summer he was supposed to lead he's supposed to be on a missions trip, and he has a heart for Africa, and then he prayed about it, and he got this name Jeffreys Bay, and he did not even know that it's a city in South Africa, and then he found out. It says is it possible to do that with YWAM? I don't have any context. I don't even know how to do this. I'm like, hey, we can help facilitate you, and he says, really, and then he literally recruited almost everybody in this whole team, and the fact is that Susan, she lived in South Africa for a while. She lived an hour away from Jeffreys Bay, knew all the leadership, and then you just see the team gel. I've been in YWAM for 28 years. Okay, and in that 28 years, I've been on a lot of outreach teams. I've seen a lot of outreach teams. I've sent out a lot of outreach teams, and I haven't quite seen one like this before. These are these young people that have been affiliated with this team. Is just just been either they're going on, or even those who just step back. I've been so impressed with just their dedication and commitment to God, and wanting just to do what God says, and their growth and commitment, and just wanting to be a blessing, and just follow a path. And I just believe that's why God's brought us here, is just to help get these people and mobilize them and send them forth. So what's God doing? YWAM Lynchburg in its infancy is sending out his first international outreach team. And I think that's a major excitement. It is crazy that we're doing this. But that's in the human mindset, but what God is doing is so much greater. So I'm excited about our next podcast when I get to tell you what happened. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you want to ask me some other questions?
See, you planted that cliffhanger. People are going to be coming back because they want to know.
That's right. One month from now.
I do have a question, though, because you and I have felt called to predominantly long-term missions. You all planted roots in Lynchburg. I planted roots in Richmond. And there are some people that wonder about the value of short-term missions. What value does somebody bring if they're only going to be there for 2 weeks? But you just expressed that over the last couple of decades, you have been a part of and have also sent teams. And so you know that there's value in short-term missions. What is the value in short-term missions?
Okay, so I would say threefold. So like there's three major things I could think off the top of my head just by asking that question. And one is that there's if you're a long-term missionary and you're receiving an outreach team. Now I would say there's some outreach teams you wish they never come. I mean, I'm just telling you straight, okay? Like, oh God, why did you come? But I would say the majority of them are a huge encouragement. There's times, especially when you're in a place where you're challenged and you're struggling, and then you have a team come in and they bring excitement. What it does is it energizes and gives you the life. So it's a physical blessing for the missionaries there, you know. Also, also when you get a team from outside that comes in, they're able to. I mean, I'm talking especially the international trips. They're able to touch the population in ways that that you never thought of or even seen. One example is I remember I was in the Philippines and they asked me to orientate a team from Cambodia going into the Philippines working as a squatter community. These Cambodians, it's just interesting because in their culture, they would do, I mean, they would do things that the Filipinos would not even consider or think about doing. And it really just touched the heart of the people there. And so like it just coming from a different cultural perspective now at times, yes, I do believe you need cultural orientation. You need there's plenty of stories about people screw that up, but a lot of times what happens is it actually opens up doors because of their differences and sometimes even the blind sides that they can move in. Now that I think of another one, but another one is a change of the short termer that goes over. So like the short termer, actually their eyes are open and they see the world in a different light. They get exposed to life and that changes the way they live the rest of their life. It could call them to missions, you know. I mean, it's usually most of our long-term missionaries came from a short-term outreach. And so like a lot of them now, personally, like personally, when God called me into missions, I mean, I did a DTS and I knew I was going to be long-term, but that's a rarity in YWAM. Most of our long-term missionaries come from a short-term experience. And so they can be called that, but also the thing is, if they're not necessarily called as a full-time vocational missionary, if they grasp the understanding, they can impact the kingdom in any sphere that they're called in. This is something I was reading. I'm doing this morning actually. That we're called. I mean, God asked the Israelites to be a holy priesthood, a holy nation. Okay. So they're called to be a priesthood and holy nation. A priest would be someone who would be an intermediate between man and God, right? I believe as Christians, that's what we're called. We're called to be an intermediate and also a holy nation. And one thing about being a priesthood means in a holy nation, those words are not singular; they're plural. The things we're called to do it as a body. And the fact is that I understand that we are representation, that we're supposed to bring, we're supposed to be, see a holy nation is also a livelihood, how you live. We're supposed to show like a different life to those around us and make an impact in that. And I'm just saying like that can happen. You experience that on a mission field, but that's actually supposed to happen in our daily life. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely believe in the vocational. I mean, I've been in YWAM. I've been in full-time missions 28 years now. So, I mean, like, yeah, I definitely believe in the vocational aspect of missions, but I also believe in the fact that whatever sphere you're called in, it be in a business, education, and stuff like that, you, in some sense, are called to be a royal priesthood or a missionary in that context. And having a short-term missions can actually thrust you into that. Of course, the fact is if you get these short terms that go over, there's many short-termers that actually they see the need in missions and they also become a financial backer of those in the long term. And so there's a definitely, and that's where God's kingdom is. That's where God uses each other to help each other financially. And so there's a lot of benefits. And I mean, those are the ones I can think off the top of my head. I'm sure if you give me 5 more minutes, I can come up with a couple more.
The people are learning. I don't prep you. I throw the questions out there. But what's funny is the things that you named or I can resonate with that because I was running essentially short-term missions things for folks coming into Richmond, whether for a couple hours, a couple days, a week, a couple months. And those are some of the things that I landed on as well. That when you jokingly said, when some teams come in and you wish they didn't, part of that is when a team comes in with the mindset of I'm going to fix rather than I'm going to serve.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that idea that you also named about perspective shift, that became one of the big focuses for me in that work. Is it's not about the work they could do, because sometimes I had to do more work in order to get them work to do.
Sure. Yeah.
But if I could equip them to better understand who God is and who their neighbors were and how to love God and love their neighbors, then that would make the work worth it. And this is something that's beautiful about YWAM Lynchburg, is you all aren't just saying, all right, come in and we're going to send you out. You're actually seeking to disciple, seeking to walk alongside, seeking to equip, so that when you do send a team, it's not blindly or rashly, but you know that you are sending folks that are more prepared to go in, willing to serve and willing to have their perspectives challenged.
Can I just jump on what you just said there?
Absolutely.
Like we were meeting with this team every week, up to like last Monday. And so every week since the beginning of the year, we were meeting them. And I remember just talking about like, okay, you guys are going overseas, and we're talking about differences of the culture. I made it very clear, like, yeah, the tendency is to want to do things and to complete a task, right? I says your priority there is to build a relationship, and you might find yourself go to a location and things are not as they said, or they're not prepared or not ready, or maybe it doesn't even work out. The bottom line is like if you understand your goal is relationship, then that thing doesn't matter. Actually, the task is secondary to building the relationship. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're not. I mean, I'm not saying that there's a value. Okay, there's a value. I was just talking to a friend of mine about doing tasks. I just came back. I didn't share this part, but I just came back from Brazil like a week ago, right? And I was on my way. On the way to the airport. I was talking to my friend Lindsay, and there's a possibility. I'm not saying we're going to do this, but there is a possibility. They're saying, hey, look, next summer we could send a team to Ukraine and help build houses. I mean. And which is a massive need. I mean, YWAM's been doing that right now. And I have friends over there now working in that. And I was just thinking, yeah, we can do a group of Liberty students go to Ukraine. I mean, yeah, it was kind of, I'm pretty crazy, because I'm telling you, a lot of the parents were kind of freaking out over South Africa. Okay, let's just send them to Ukraine.
You're weaning them in.
I'm just like, let's do the real stuff. And that's very task oriented. You're building houses and you're trying to get as many houses done as possible. And that's good, but even if you talk to them in that context, it's all about relationship too. And I would say and I think this is the biggest thing is and I also said, like, if you don't understand something or something maybe offends you, just automatically assume that you don't understand what's going on culturally, and walk in an issue of servanthood and forgiveness, and this is so important for short-term mission teams, but it's how much more important for missionaries in the long field. I mean, and a lot of times we think if we're in our passport country, what I mean by that, like I got a U.S. passport, right? I could tell you right away, when I first came to Richmond, I didn't try to fix everything. I was just trying to get climatized, even though this was supposed to be my people, right? Because Richmond has its own ticking. YWAM Richmond had its own system. They had their own things, and like I don't even understand. When I first entered in, I didn't even understand the undercurrent. And it's wanting to go in, be a learner, be a server, and this should be the heart of a missionary. Why? Because this is the heart of Jesus, and honestly, like if we walked our lives in that, I mean, let's just say someone blows up at you like the grocery store because of something, you don't know what they're going through. If you walked in as a servant attitude, and just instead of being offended and upset and hurt, that you actually, hey, look, I'm sorry, and I hope I can make your day better. I mean, the truth is, like, you can serve it and being humble. And I'm, Lord knows I need to hear that message, right? I mean, how many times do we get upset over something like being disrespected or something like that, and trying to not to assume the other person, but this is really true lessons. And we're sitting an outreach team. I believe they're as prepped as they can be none of them have been to Africa. Only a couple of them outside of my daughter has been overseas. I mean, and so like so they're walking in a very learning atmosphere, but like I said, I really believe God wants to make an impact, and I don't know what's going to happen. We've been praying for divine appointments, but that's that's the exciting journey, because sometimes you step out of the boat and you don't know. I mean, you're like, okay, God, if this is you, something you got to show up, and just being that dependent upon Him as far as trusting Him and believing in Him.
Well, in light of what you just shared, how can people come alongside what's happening in Lynchburg?
Oh, that's great. Fantastic. I kind of feel like I sound like a broken record in this part. Sorry. If you haven't seen me in my podcast,
Yeah.
that's what I usually say. YWAMLynchburg.org. Donate. Boom. Oh my God. Tax deductible.
Yep.
You can't beat that. Regular monthly support. They ask how much. Go ahead, put $100 down per month. Like, if you can't do that, if you only do $5, I thank you so much for your gift.
Yeah.
Any kind of one-time or monthly gifts is a huge help.
Yeah.
We're praying, Paul. You've been helping me on something that hopefully we're going to get a verdict on that next month. But currently, honestly, the truth is that if it wasn't for YWAM Virginia, we would be. I mean, right now we owe money to YWAM Virginia as for YWAM Lynchburg, so we have legitimate debts that we need to pay, and so I want to thank YWAM VA for just standing behind us. But we're a missions group and we're not a money bank, and so it's not like we can't depend on that forever, and that's money we have to pay back. So any kind of gift you could give is a huge blessing. Actually, tomorrow afternoon, we have some people coming over from another organization here in Lynchburg. They're going to help us paint and fix up. If you live in the Lynchburg area, I would love for you to pray and consider about just volunteering or joining us.
Yeah.
One thing is, again, if you're pretty soon, I think it's going to be the last Thursday of every month, we're going to start a monthly worship night. Just come and join us if you're in Lynchburg. And when the next semester starts, we're going to do it every week. And so we just want to welcome the community every Thursday night, especially starting in August. Just say you're welcome to come and join us and be a part of what we're doing. Just relate. I think that's a big one. If you're in YWAM and I ask you, if you have a heart for college students, we definitely need more staff, and pray about that. Pray about joining us and joining staff. And if you're not sure about it, come and volunteer for a couple months, see how it is. Of course, the rhythm's going to be a little different. If you come during the summer, all the college students just left, but, and so this summer is going to be a little more, we got some different activities happening this summer, but yeah, come and join us in that way. So what are the 3 ways you can join? 1, financially. 2nd, you can, just join us in our activities, volunteer practically around around our base while we're preparing for the next summer, the fall. And 3, pray about joining staff. These are 3 basic ways that anyone can help us join. And and that's if you're anywhere between 16 to 80. You could do one of those. You're like, oh, I don't have much money, but I would love to give, but I don't have money. Well, if you can give $3 a month, we can do that. We facilitate that. If you can do more, we can do more than that. Just join us a part of our story and see what God's got to do, because when you invest in YWAM Lynchburg, and of course, intercede for us, pray for us. When you invest in YWAM Lynchburg, understand that your investment is not just for YWAM Lynchburg, but it's for the kingdom. We're talking about expanding his kingdom, and that's through discipling these young people and sending them out. So, yeah.
Yep. And right now, those who have already supported, their support is about to stretch all the way to South Africa. So this is real stuff. Well, we've already eaten into some of your mini sermon time, but, has God been placing a verse in your heart as we close out?
Oh, I'm not going to read the whole verse. I'm not going to, the passage. I had a whole passage ready here. Okay. Matthew chapter 14. If you start in verse 13, it talks about Jesus feeding the 5,000. And in that context, Jesus asked them to give them something to eat. And then they go oh, we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he says, bring them here to me. And the thing is that was a challenge that Jesus was throwing at the disciples, I think. I think God, I think Jesus, and there's so much more depth in this passage. I honestly, I can easily spend 20 minutes just the intro on this passage about the background and what was happening. But the bottom line is I really believe Jesus was challenging them of let God work through you. And they quite didn't grasp that. And Jesus showed them that. But then later on, he asked them to get in a boat. He's praying on top of a mountain. And then later on, Jesus is walking on water, and Peter has this challenge. And he says, in verse 28, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to walk on water. And he said, come. So Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cry out, Lord, save me. And Jesus immediately reached out his hand, took hold of him, saying, Oh, you have little faith, why did you doubt? And I think about that. The reason why is because I think that sometimes, I mean, they just saw this amazing miracle, and again, and I don't know how they felt, but I mean, honestly, there's so much insecurity you can get when Jesus is challenging you to do something that's way beyond yourself, and then then Peter, like, he says, if it's you, Lord, and I honestly, like, I think that was it. Like, God, if it's you, call us to come to Lynchburg. I mean, if this is really you, and now we see everything happening, and really, honestly, I think we're walking on water. I mean, and I think in some ways we're sinking a little bit. But the thing is, we're looking at Jesus, and said, like, God, you're the one who called me out. And just keep your eyes focused on Him. And you know, this passage speaks to me so many times throughout this whole pioneering situation, but it also could speak to you. I don't know what you're going through, but the truth is like, God will challenge you. He does, if He's not challenging you already. And what is that challenge? It could be talking to your neighbor. It could be talking to a family relative. It could actually maybe something more radical. I just talked to a young Indian man last Friday. He was God told him to quit his job and be available. And he's asking God, what does that mean? But he quit his job. And and of course, you know, I'm not saying quit your job. I'm just saying the thing is, sometimes God challenges us to do something. The question is, will we step out of the boat?
Yeah.
And then, and it doesn't mean that the storm stops. The storm didn't stop when Peter was walking on the water. It was in the midst of the storm the miracle took place. And it's so easy to look around us and say, well, I don't have control of any of this, and then feel like we're going to sink. The reality is we never did. Yeah. And if we embrace that God, I'm just completely trusting you, knowing that it's all out of my hands, that I'll just walk in obedience. And so that's what we're doing in YWAM Lynchburg. That's what this team is doing on Monday. And there's times when we panic and we might sink a little bit, but Jesus keeps on pulling us up. And so I want to challenge you, just like, go ahead and step out of the boat. You do not get a testimony without passing a test. And you don't pass a test if you don't take it. And so, like, if God's asking you to step out, do it. So God bless you. And I hope that encourages some of you out there.
Yeah. And I want to thank all of you on the Lynchburg team for the ways that you are stepping out, because there's things that you're doing that others would say, well, if we don't have the money, we can't do this. Or if we haven't been around for a year, we can't send a team across the world. But you all are hearing the invitation to step out, and y'all are doing it. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for sharing. And I want to thank all of you for listening, and not just for listening, but for walking with us as we together, as one family, explore what it means to know God and make Him known.
If you'd like to learn more about what God's doing in Virginia, visit us at ywamva.org and join us next week for more stories of God at work.
We're all one family.